Now, Sky News has gained access to a new EU project which aims to develop more effective prostate cancer screening processes across member states. There's no such programme in place for the UK, although government advisers are expected to make a decision on the effectiveness of such a programme by the end of the year. So let's talk a little bit about the issue. I'm joined now by David James, who's Director of Patient Projects and Influencing at Prostate Cancer Research, and Dee Daly, who was diagnosed with the disease in 2016. So very good to have you both here with us. Thanks so much for coming in. David, I want to start with you and start by looking at the numbers involved here, because prostate cancer is now the UK's most common cancer, isn't it?
Yes, unfortunately so. Over 55,000 men are diagnosed every year with prostate cancer. Over 12,000 men die each year from prostate cancer. So it's the most common cancer, but when it's caught early, we know that the survival rates are really very good. So at 10 years, your survival rates are close to 100% if it's caught early, but when it's caught late, well, those survival rates plummet. And that's why it's so important that we catch this disease early.
And Dee, what was your experience? Because we were just saying there, you were diagnosed in 2016, and thankfully you have got the all clear, so that's fantastic news. But talk us through what happened to you.
I just started having some urine symptoms, and I went for a check, and then I was told that I had prostate cancer.
So you didn't have any kind of screening beforehand?
No.
It wasn't that you were well and someone suggested you have tests, it was just you had symptoms and then you followed through on that?
That's why it's so important to have this screening process in place.
Well, yes, as we were saying, David, our correspondent has been and seen some of these early trials of a screening programme for the EU, these ones carried out in Dublin, get underway. What is the UK's position on screening at the moment?
So at the moment, we don't have a screening programme for prostate cancer like there is for, say, breast cancer or cervical cancer. We have what's called an informed choice programme. So if you're a man over the age of 50 in the UK, you're entitled to get a simple blood test. But the problem is that we're not going to tell you about it, and that leads to a lot of inequities. So what we're calling for is that the government needs to be proactive, a letter through the door. And at the moment, we're calling for a screening programme for high-risk groups. So that's men from black ethnicity have a higher risk of prostate cancer than the general population. If you have a family history of prostate cancer, you're also in that high-risk group. And then men with certain genetic mutations, like the BRCA gene.
So at the moment, you're not advised to push yourself forward to go for a test, but you can get one if you lobby your GP and ask for one. And you're saying that there are certain groups of people that are more likely to do that than others.
Absolutely. So we know that some people are getting that test. In other places, GPs are turning men away. So there's this regional inequities in the system, and we're trying to make it so that everyone has that same ability to get tested.
And Dee, were you aware that there was a test that you could do that might highlight a risk factor or perhaps even the presence of a problem? Were you aware of that before you started getting symptoms?
Not at all, not at all. And if that was in place, maybe I wouldn't be in the situation that I'm in now.
Is it fair to say that the tests aren't necessarily definitive that are currently on offer, David? Are there some complications with the test? Is it always reliable?
So the first step in diagnosing prostate cancer is a PSA test, which is, as I said, it's a blood test. But it's not by itself a standalone test. If that is raised, then what happens next is you'll go and get an MRI scan. And if that is abnormal, you'll then go to get a biopsy. And so it's a stepwise process in order to diagnose prostate cancer. The PSA test just by itself, isn't good enough to determine whether prostate cancer is there or not, but it is part of a process. And we know that the evidence for that whole process is good enough to be targeting men in high-risk groups now, and that's what we're calling the government to do.
And I should say what the Department for Health and Social Care is saying about this. They say the UK National Screening Committee is reviewing the evidence for prostate cancer screening programmes, including targeted approaches for men at high risk. So a review is underway. How soon might we get the results of that, as far as you're aware?
They've committed to releasing those results by the end of 2025. So that review, as you say, is ongoing, and we are very hopeful that they will give a positive recommendation.
So you want it to go ahead. How soon could that happen if they were to give it the thumbs up at the end of the year?
It would have to go through a few different steps after that, but likely it would take a few years for them to kind of put everything in place. But obviously we'll be encouraging, if that is the case, for them to do it as soon as possible, because too many men are dying needlessly every year from this disease.
And would it be costly?
So last year we produced a cost-effectiveness model. We commissioned Deloitte to produce that, and we released that in the Houses of Commons. And we were able to show for a targeted screening campaign, there was a positive socioeconomic benefit for the country using the current tests and system we have in place. So, you know, not only is it saving lives, but it's actually going to be delivering a positive economic benefit for the country as well.
Andy, tell us a bit about your treatment. Was it tough to get through? Did it take a long time? And I mean, obviously great news that you've come out the other side so fit and well.
It was, initially it was a difficult process to go through. And fortunately for me now, I'm in remission, but it wasn't a pleasant journey to go through at all.
No, I'm sure it wasn't, but I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. But it's lovely to have you here with us, looking so well today. And really interesting to hear about your experience, but also to hear from you as well, David James. Thanks both very much indeed for coming in and telling us a little bit about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Right now, we're going to take a quick look at the weather.